Citrate Gaming is
Hmm.
a nonprofit that seeks to spread empathy through games. This is an appreciation of Horizon Zero Dawn, along with Kim,
Cool.
who has never played it and is not familiar with it. So this should be
Nope,
fun
not
for
at
her.
all.
It is also casual going through of the different aspects of the game, certain design elements, just certain things you notice about the story, and basically we're going to
Hmm.
try to analyze the game from the standpoint of what can it teach or help the person playing it. On my end, my background is in psychology, so I wanted
Hmm.
to analyze it from a more psychological perspective. How can we bring this out into our real lives and actually like apply the lessons that we learn from the game into our real lives? And I also wanted to like take note of some game design elements. And Kim is here basically because she's an awesome human being, and she is also a very deep thinker as well.
So Caleb and I are college buddies.
Yep.
His young, I don't know if he's mentioned his younger sister a whole lot, but his younger sister Mikkel was in the same class as me. We were pretty close. So I'm friends with both of them. And yeah, my I was a biology major in college, so that's my general background. I currently live in Texas. I work in a medical laboratory, and yeah, I enjoy games. I'm not super intensely into them, but I do enjoy games and I love psychology. So I think we're gonna have a good time here tonight.
The development studio was Guerrilla Games, which produced
Hmm.
Killzone, and Killzone was an FPS. This is actually their first open world game. Here's something I really love about this game design. The HUD basically has an
Okay.
explanation, an in-game, in-story
Oh,
explanation.
that is cool.
Yeah,
I've not seen that before.
it's very rare that it's done well, right? And that's one thing where I was like, oh, this is good. It's integrated, right? It's just a really good story element there that immerses you just a little bit more. Okay, I already know this. I'm so smart. It's a puzzle.
Changed color.
Like all of this hollow stuff she sees, that's all
Hmm.
through the focus. She can only see all of that stuff because she has the focus. Everybody else who doesn't have a focus only sees,
Door changed
bare
color
metal.
too.
No, yeah, which I really like the juxtaposition of like the futuristic on that really like
I did it.
kind of not technology. I don't know exactly primitive. There we go. That'd
Yeah,
be the
yeah.
word for it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Well,
Ooh, that's a good point. Growing up is sometimes described as a liminal
need to know
phase.
how to survive.
So yeah, so this whole transition between like the cave is kind of the underworld, right? And you're going through this
Oh,
process of dying and coming back up, or rather, going down into the underworld, learning something new, and then coming back up, having gained something valuable.
Shaky.
so we have a literal allegory of the cave going on here.
Kinda, yeah. It being a
See this
liminal
pond
phase
over here?
is
It's
very
called
apt,
South Brush.
or this whole
Gather its berries in your pouch.
section of the game is apt to be as uh,
Aloy,
apt
come
as a
now.
description of the
Gather
liminal phase
berries.
because you're also playing the tutorial.
We'll
This
find
world
a
is
herd of
absolutely
machines,
beautiful.
and I will teach you how to hunt.
So are these
Outcasts and
machines
years of the
completely
tribe.
like
Maybe he
self-sufficient?
doesn't like the truth.
Yes,
And
yeah.
years of
As
fun.
far as you know, anyway.
Come now, let's find that herd.
Okay.
Follow.
They're
What's their
what's their what?
fuel source? Do they like get fuel from like plants or plants or something?
Partially. There's some in-world explanations for that you learn later in the story.
Arrows.
So as a little kid, you have this ability to roll, right? I believe
Uh-huh.
in the game you don't get that, or once you grow up, you don't get that ability until you put a skill point into it.
Now, gather stalks of ringleaf
So it's
and
like
plants.
I have suddenly lost the ability to roll, and then I regain it again.
Now, take down that strider.
Oh wow! See
Target the
that
eye
machine
or
is
the
a lot
canister.
more feline in its movements, like a
Charges.
tiger.
Be ready to roll out of the way.
More like a horse.
Good strike!
I guess I can. Oh yeah, I can see that too.
Again!
Yeah. Oh. Woo. The nice thing about this tutorial is that it does give story beats as well. It's not like some, do nothing tutorial.
Oh, so nobody else recognizes the little thingy that she's got that lets her see the holograms?
Yeah, exactly. She's the only one who can see the holograms because she's
Okay, so
wearing the
nobody else
device.
has that little earpiece?
Yeah, nobody else has that earpiece. We found that in the cave, remember? And that was the thing we came out of the cave with. So it's almost
Okay,
almost like a literal allegory of the cave kind of thing in a way. It's like the focus granted her vision. Which is pretty great actually from a storytelling standpoint. It's like that's really well done. It's well written.
Well, and it's especially important that it's been given to it. It's especially interesting storytelling wise that it's given to a child because like people are going to be less inclined to believe that she's seeing what she says she's seeing because, kids make up stuff all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm a ninja. I'm doing this.
Ta-da.
I'm doing this because I'm a ninja and because I can see things.
You are a hallucinating ninja.
Yep. You get to make a choice.
Okay. So throwing the rock at her was clearly a challenge. I'm making the choice for knock the rock from his hands. The idea of taking out a machine with an arrow just it's strange, but I love it.
Right? It's great.
It reminds me of this one time I was playing D&D and I nat 20'd on I was trying to blow up a train and I somehow shot an arrow through exactly the right thing to blow it up without causing destruction to any of my teammates. It was really
Beautiful.
cool. Now, granted, in the same session, one of my companions crit failed and totally almost axed me in half, but somehow I survived.
Oof.
Because it's D&D and that's how it rolls.
Right. Yep, that is how it goes.
Slow-mo jump.
And suddenly, she's grown up.
Very nice. She looks a little bit like the last character I played in the that I played an RPG with.
Oh, really?
It's kind of how I was pictured Harley to look in.
That's cool.
She was a total badass. She had an affinity for the bear god.
Nice. Well, Aloy is also a total badass, so
Well, duh.
look at that.
Would I ever play
Absolute
a character
badass.
who wasn't badass in at least some way?
It's true. However, it's kind
Otherwise,
of...
they're not fun to play.
Yeah, right? However, it is kind of rare. This game is pretty exceptional in a number of ways, and one exceptional thing is that it is a female protagonist. Without romantic interests, actually.
Oh.
So
Rost?
there's like hints of romantic interest in some of the characters, but she deals with that in an interesting way,
Rost?
and I will
Rost?
not spoil that because I think you'll find that interesting. Just the
Where is he?
small
Cool.
interplays between
2 days
characters.
before proving and
Yeah.
he goes off without me? He would...
Alright, so we have the classic start to the hero's journey.
Yep, that we do.
So far we've seen kind of like the liminal spaces, we've seen world building, we've seen a character, we've seen basic like start of the hero's journey, we've got our objective.
Yep.
So all right, what did you want to draw my attention to specifically? What are some other stuff you wanted to bring up?
Oh, actually, I don't know if Tomb Raider had a romance subplot in the new one. I have no clue because I haven't played the Tomb Raider stuff. But so some of the things I wanted to draw your attention to. So there were a couple of... Let me think this over real quick. So a lot of those game elements in there, from the beginning, you're getting the sense that this is a well-crafted world. This is a world that the game developers have put like time and effort into, right? Which is usually
Most
the case.
definitely.
Yeah, it's usually the case, especially from the art direction. It's like you're gonna usually have a lot of passionate people, right, working on something. So uh, that produces, right, in any story, that's going to produce a feeling of a greater purpose. If that makes
Yes, you
sense,
can always
right?
tell when you can always tell when a game is a labor of love, even if it's got a budget of a ham sandwich. You can usually tell when a creator's really put a lot of effort into what they're doing, and like you can tell a passion project when you see it.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that was the issue. There we go. The video's a little bit better now. So yeah. So the other thing was when a player is playing through that, uh, part of the reason that we're like drawn to games in the first place, right, is that it gives us that sort of narrow focused uh, there we go. There's my camera. All right. It gives us that
There
sort
we
of.
go. Have you checked the stream? The stream is frozen.
Yeah, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going through it
Okay.
because I'm still recording, but and the recording will be fine. So, so every time you start a new game, you go through that period of learning, right?
Yes.
And it's that standard hero's journey step. You are the fool and you become the hero. But every game has this, right? It's not just every story has this, it's every game. So with a game like Horizon Zero Dawn in particular, you have this intermarriage between the tutorial and the story, right? You are playing as Aloy, but you're very closely tied to the way she's experiencing things. So in a way, for this game in particular, you become more of a partner to Aloy than like a in some games the protagonist is an empty vessel for the player to put themselves into. In games like
yes, like
Horizon,
a lot of the games
yeah.
with a lot of heavy customization, like where they are truly inviting you to become the character.
Right, exactly. In this, and this is something that is shared with Hellblade, actually. You're more of a partner to the character. So you're doing things that or you're encouraged. We'll put it in another way. You're encouraged to do things in ways that the character would do. So, like, for example, when I first played this game, when I did my first playthrough, I had one of those rare moments where I hesitated when killing like random NPCs because the story building was so good up to that point that I was like, this is a person, right? which is like it's a rare thing for a video game to actually do that. But that's also another thing, going back to the whole compassion kind of deal, and going back to why that's so important for Aloy, right, and why it's so important for her character, and what the gamer can like experience out of this. If you compare this game to, like, so you have the dialogue wheel and you have the choice wheel, right? Those choices are actually pretty rare in this game. They don't come. They only come up every few hours or so, for one, and they're always within the context of what within Aloy's own character would you choose for her to do, if that makes sense.
All the choices are things that she would do,
that she would potentially do, that you could see her doing, right? But it falls upon you to decide whether Aloy is going to be compassionate. What was the one that you chose was insightful or intelligent, right? Using her smarts. And then the third one was using her courageousness, her more of her strength, right? Her strength of character.
Well, and that actually connects actually connects really well to the three centers of instinct that I've mentioned before. Like everybody has the brain, the heart, and the body, the gut, the will, if you will.
Yeah.
And all three of those we act from all three of those. There's going to be one that you connect with most easily and one that you connect with least.
Hmm.
But everybody's kind of got all three of those talking to them. And I find it interesting that comes up in the game totally like independently as
Yeah.
well. We just see that in a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's really cool to have that sort of triumvirate thing in a single character, and for it to be bound within the personality of the character too. So like in other games that utilize that kind of feature, I wanted to point out. So like in Mass Effect, for example, I don't know if you've played through Mass Effect. I don't know. I actually don't know.
I have not.
Okay. So just as kind of a context thing, in Mass Effect, these choices have much more bearing on the story. So as a result, there's a lot more. There are a lot more like in-game bonuses basically that you can get from playing your character a certain way. You can, but the choices are binary. You go Paragon, which is like your standard like hero who's above reproach, and then you have Renegade, which is well, it's meant to be more like the get shit done and don't care about other people's
Chaotic
opinions.
good.
Yeah, chaotic good, but it actually comes more across sometimes it comes more across as being a dick. Where I think
Well, that's kind of how chaotic good ends up looking
right.
a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's like the proper utilization of chaotic good, right? But in but once again in Horizon Zero Dawn, they have this overarching story that you're following, right? And they give you agency within the story, right? But you are a partner to Aloy. You are not putting yourself into the shoes of that. Or you are putting yourself into the shoes of that character, but you're coming alongside her to help her, right? That's a very key difference from something like Mass Effect, where you are playing as Commander Shepard, right? Commander Shepard is somebody that you're just filling your Shepard is a little bit more in between, a little bit more of like he has his own character stuff. He or she has their own character stuff, but you are given a really wide leeway in how that character grows and develops.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So like you tailor make your own Shepard basically, in a way. And that's in contrast to something like Half-Life, for example, where Gordon is his name Gordon? I don't remember.
I don't know. I haven't played Half-Life.
I spaced anyway. Where like he's basically a vessel, right? So and this is where I kind of want to point something out, I guess, would be when you are trying to understand, like when you're trying to walk in the shoes of somebody, how do you approach that? Like, how do you treat them? Like, how should you treat them when you're trying to understand somebody's point of view, when you're trying to show them, like, what is the first step to empathy, basically, here?
Yeah. Well, and so, like, rephrase the question. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
I'm sort of driving at a certain thing where, when the player is given less agency in the character's decisions, they have to try to understand the main character on their terms, on the main character's terms, rather than on the player's terms. So for Aloy, for example, Aloy is her own character. You get to make decisions for her, but only within the subset of decisions that she that are possible for her. Also, red, blue, or green? Green for Mass Effect. He'll get it. You can ask him
Um,
later. um
uh,
so so
Interesting.
yeah, so like when I so so when you're coming alongside somebody in real life, how are you going to treat them? The question is, are you going to treat them like um are you going to treat them like their own human being? Or are you going to treat them like a reflection of yourself? Or
Yes.
are you going to treat them as um a non-entity, basically, as like, I don't know anything about you, you have this mask on, for example, you're an empty vessel, right? So these are different ways that we
Mhm.
can treat real people, and the question is,
Yes, and
yeah,
that's most definitely something that I've seen in a lot of different people. Like, take for example something as simple as I'm a girl. The take like the women who automatically assume that because you're a girl, like you want to have kids
right,
for and because that was something that was really good for them and something that they'd always wanted and something that might have been the best thing that ever happened to them. they're go- a lot of times, especially like women of of like middle age, will assume that yeah, you must want this too, or you're going to want it because this was so good for me. Therefore, because like there's like some commonality between
yeah,
you and me. I see that.
yeah, it's like
Um,
because this was good for me, therefore it must be good for you, right? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Or like going to college. That's another really common one.
Hmm.
Like the 4-year college was exactly the correct choice for me, but I knew a lot of people for whom that would have been a terrible
Oh
idea.
yeah, oh yeah, same. So again, within the context of Aloy and her world, right? So
What does it
let's
make
take
sense
a,
for her to do?
yeah, it's like what makes sense for her to do, and this game is basically coming alongside you and saying, here, let's teach you basically what is good for Aloy in a way, right? Because there's this overarching storyline that will
Mhm.
be revealed as time goes along. That, it's encouraging us to consider her perspective, basically, right?
That is interesting, like how video games are a good vehicle for that, because
Exactly.
another really common vehicle for that is books, like
Hmm.
reading a memoir of somebody who's from a very different from a really different background to you, and the choices that they make that like to you as an outsider may not make sense, but because you're like camped out inside this person's head, all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a reason behind that.
Hmm.
Like I just finished a book called Where the Grass is Green and the Girls Are Pretty. I mean, it's pretty fluff. It's got a really like kind of sappy happy ending.
Nice.
But one of our main characters is a woman who made a very generous donation to get her daughter into Princeton. In other words, college fraud.
Ah,
And
yes.
her and like that's absolutely wrong and horrible, but you can see why she did it because when she was growing up, she partied all through high school, couldn't get into the college she wanted, and that kind of made a good chunk of her life way more difficult than it had to be. So she wanted the very best for her daughter so that her daughter didn't have to go through that. So
Hmm.
like I'm not saying that what she did was right, but there's an element of understanding that you can
Right.
get through attempting to walk in the shoes of another person like that.
Exactly, exactly. It's like the way story and the way stories are told are very important for that. So like the um I'd actually wonder, it's like, are you more likely to sympathize with somebody? So actually, so like this is actually a psychological thing, um where you are more likely to sympathize with somebody if you have walked in their shoes, right? Quote unquote, if you have common experience with that person, if that makes
Yes.
sense. So here's the key difference between your story, between the story that you just brought up, and the key difference between um,
That in the
Horizon Zero
game.
Dawn. Yeah, and that in the game of Horizon Zero Dawn. In Horizon Zero Dawn, you are walking directly alongside this character and you are experiencing life as she experiences it. And that's
Yes.
that's a very key difference. I think that
Well,
we
and
haven't.
forcing you to make,
Yeah,
as rare as they are, forcing you to make those choices is a huge deal there, because those are choices that you may never have to make in
right,
real life, because
right.
you're not part of that, you're not part of whatever in group would be making that choice.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So there are choices. Yeah, exactly. There are choices that you are exposed to that you have to make that would never that you would never make in real life. Um, and doing this in a game setting, like so, how would you? I don't know. Like, let's think about like how. Well, actually, I'll just ask it this way. Um, what do you like? So, what are your impressions initially of the game, and what do you think you've learned thus far from it in that direction? Like, what would
In
you
the
say you
direction
could
of
like
empathy.
apply to it? Yeah, in the direction of empathy, or just in general.
Okay, let's see. My brain is having to filter through all the technical difficulties, so
Oh
it's having
yeah, yeah,
so
that
I'm
was a
having
bit
trouble
rough.
processing.
Yeah.
But so what it, the technical difficulties completely made this get lost for me. What is Aloy going for? Like, what is the boon that she so desperately wants that she's working her butt off
Okay.
to
Yeah.
get?
Yeah. So, this is part of the this is also part of the intro, um, where you
Mm-hmm.
get some background that she is an outcast from birth, um, and she is considered an abomination by some for some reason you don't really know yet. And the matriarchs gave her to Rost, who is another outcast. But so they gave her to Rost, who's another outcast, and Rost obviously raises her. The boon that she is going for is she wants to put herself in the proving. Like she wants to run in the proving to become a brave, which is a Nora warrior, basically. And she wants to be first in the proving, which is this big competition. She wants to be first because then she will be granted the boon by the matriarchs to find out who her real mother is. Because that's the big thing
Okay.
that she really wants to learn. Yeah, is that she wants to learn who her mother is.
All right, and is this a matriarchal society, more
Yes.
egalitarian?
This is more of a
Matriarchal. Okay.
matriarchal society. They get the you'll get more of it as we play along, but they make references like to the Great Mother, to they're very uh, I think actually like rights and property and that's all passed down the matriarchal line more so. But it's not
Okay.
like it. But it's also not like the men are second class citizens or something either. It's a pretty balanced society actually. I think overall,
Okay,
but
so
but
fairly
definitely leaning toward
egalitarian, leaning towards
very
matriarchal.
much leaning
Gotcha.
toward matriarchal. The primary leaders are the matriarchs. So
Well, so what I'm hearing here is, well, one, first off, that's there's definitely a sense of empathy there in looking for a missing parent, because I've again, that's something that I've never experienced and I will never experience because I know exactly who my parents
yeah,
are.
yep. It's
And
also a very
also,
typical like orphan, kind of storyline for the hero's journey, right? It's like it's usually an orphan.
yes.
Yeah. So,
Well, and one thing that I value in my life very, very highly is my relationship with my mother. So it does take it does take work for me to empathize with somebody who has like either a very poor relationship with their mother or no relationship at all, just because
mm,
that's so different from what I've experienced. So that's another really good element of empathy that can be brought up
right.
by this game in particular.
Right. And
Um,
because you're walking in her
that
shoes like
experience.
as she's experiencing these things, you're getting an insight into her life that would be not uh not achievable, by most.
Well, and
So,
on an emotional level, like because of that, because my relationship with my mother is something that I value so much, in learning to empathize with that, that brings up a lot of like, oh man, imagine if I didn't have this relationship that
Right.
I do have.
Mhm.
That's a huge that bears a lot of emotional weight to it. That's a really
Mhm.
interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. We get a lot of this in Hellblade too. There are a lot of very uh there are a lot of parallels here, actually. Yeah, as far as that
Well,
goes.
and we can also definitely like so I can also see how this game, I don't know what direction it goes with this,
Mhm.
but I don't know how how important like family lines are in this society, but there's also the idea of finding out who you are in the context of where you came from.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's a big theme in this. And actually,
Because there's
I
kind
won't
of
spoil.
two who you are.
Yeah.
There's the who you are that kind of is your environment, and then there's the
Mhm.
who you are that is your sense of self.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. And this story definitely plays with that a lot because well like the world is very big actually, so we'll be dealing with two other tribes actually once we leave the Nora tribe. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more. There's a whole lot more. And Aloy, as she discovers more about herself and her past, um,
It's going to
that's
solidify
it
that sense of self.
exactly. It solidifies that she goes through, well, much like what anybody does when they learn something like big about themselves. You know, you go through this period of destruction and then reformation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this is actually something that I want to bring attention to as well, is these little cycles of like death and rebirth, like that go throughout the entire story. Or there are these little,
Uh-huh.
you could call them like mini heroes journeys throughout the entire thing, where you're constant, or not mini heroes journeys, but like into the underworld and back up, right? You're constantly going down, learning something new, maybe getting injured in the process, right? But bringing something else up that is more beneficial to you, that you grow and you learn from, that
Yeah.
adds to your
And
experience.
honestly, that's something that we should be striving for in life anyway. I mean, not to say that we should be discontented with where we are all the time and constantly looking for
Hmm.
something new, because that
Well, that's yeah,
that would
that's a
drive people
difference.
crazy. That's a
Yeah,
bad
yeah.
idea.
You
That's
only
also a
well,
flaw.
and actually too, this is a good point too. It's like you only go into into the underworld when it's necessary, or when you stumble into it by accident, right? Uh,
Well,
as the
I've
case
always
may
thought of
be.
personality. So I tend to think of like people are kind of like a garden. Everybody's got a bunch of seeds thrown on them. You know, more get thrown on over the years, and you choose which things you pull up and which things you fertilize over the years.
Hmm.
So like when you find, like, you don't pull up the flowers, you pull up a weed when you find it, or what, or whatever.
Hmm.
So like yes, we should be checking for weeds all the time, but if you don't see a weed right now, it's okay, one will come
Yep.
up eventually.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Don't make problems where there are